What happens when the world's most powerful nation stands alone during a global crisis? On a day when nearly every country called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, only one stood in opposition: the United States. That single veto at the United Nations Security Council could have lasting consequences. This was not ordinary politics. The United States blocked a resolution that 14 other council members supported, showing rare global unity. With its veto, Washington halted the measure and triggered diplomatic shockwaves and humanitarian fears. The U.S.-Israel alliance stretches back decades. The United States has been Israel's primary supporter, supplying military aid and political backing in the Middle East. This relationship is rooted in shared interests and the belief that backing Israel strengthens American influence in the region. For years, Washington has used its veto to shield Israel from international criticism. But the situation in Gaza today is dire. Since the conflict reignited, Gaza's Ministry of Health reports more than 36,000 deaths. Over 2 million people remain trapped, facing famine, disease, and dwindling aid. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency warns of a funding shortfall of nearly $300 million, and the World Food Program has slashed food rations by almost half. Egypt has reinforced its border, while the vital Rafah crossing is mostly closed. Qatar has sent millions in medical aid, but the needs keep growing. Despite the worsening crisis, the United States recently approved an additional $500 million in military support for Israel. U.S. Ambassador Dorothy Shea defended the veto, stating, "We would not support any measure that fails to condemn Hamas and does not call for Hamas to disarm and leave Gaza." Israel's ambassador called the vote appeasement. Many experts warn the U.S. veto weakens the Security Council's credibility and signals support for continued Israeli military operations. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed grave concern over Gaza's humanitarian disaster. On the ground, suffering intensifies. The International Criminal Court is investigating alleged war crimes, while the United Nations Human Rights Council seeks to examine the consequences of the U.S. veto on human rights in Gaza. Hamas still launches rockets into southern Israel, and Israel refuses any solution that leaves Hamas in power. The stalemate continues, with civilians paying the price. What comes next? Some fear escalation. Egypt's military buildup suggests rising regional tension, and Hamas may feel emboldened by the lack of consensus. Others warn of stagnation, with millions in Gaza trapped and aid agencies stretched thin. Each week without progress means more hunger and displacement. A few see hope for new negotiations, perhaps led by regional players like Qatar. Could new actors break the deadlock, or will entrenched interests prevail? For viewers, this crisis exposes the limits of global institutions. The U.S. veto shows how one nation's interests can override international consensus, even as humanitarian needs soar. As analyst Ghada Majadli notes, unwavering support for one ally can lead to unprecedented isolation. In summary, the U.S. stance has increased its isolation and drawn criticism, raising the stakes for both conflict and diplomacy. The outcome of this crisis, and future global power, will hinge on what happens next. Notably, the United States has used its veto in Israel-related cases nearly 50 times, a record unmatched by any other nation. If you found this analysis helpful, subscribe and share your thoughts. We'll keep tracking the next chapter, because what happens in Gaza will